Good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock here in the Twin Cities. Welcome to today's Medical Alley webinar titled Transforming Medical Devices, Diagnostics and Wearables with AI, presented by FPT Software. So great to have all of you with us as you're starting to filter on in from the waiting room. My name is Ben Wagner. I'm the Director of Communications here at Medical Alley, and I'll be your host for today's conversation. Before we get started, I really do want to extend a very special thank you to FPT Software. They have been an incredible partner, really and a resource to the Medical Alley community. And I'm delighted to share that you'll get to learn a little bit more about the company here in just a moment. As each of you know, AI is certainly rapidly reshaping nearly every part of the medical technology landscape, the healthcare landscape writ large. And today we'll explore what some of that transformation looks like in practice, specifically within medical devices, diagnostics, and wearables, some of the opportunities that it presents and what organizations should be thinking about as they build for the future. So joining us today here are three experts with perspectives really spanning technology, cloud infrastructure, and medical device innovation. With us today is Prasad Reddy, the innovation lead at FPT Software, Dr. Gopal Chopra, the CEO of Eleuso, a medical device innovation company focused on the novel development of a pump for ECMO. And finally, Chris Bladon, a GenAI specialist with AWS. So before we begin, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. As you heard the recording maybe at the beginning, we are recording this webinar. So if you're interested in sharing this with a colleague or rewatching this, don't feel like you have to take furious notes. We will send out a link afterward if you'd like to rewatch today's webinar or share it with a colleague. As for our format today, I will wrap up my brief comments here in just a moment. Then I will turn it over to our speakers to lead today's conversation before we open it up to questions at the end. If you have any questions for our panel, there's a Q&A box there at the bottom of your screen. That's where you can throw some of those questions in really at any time. But we'll definitely have some time at the end to make sure that you have some time to get those questions answered. And so with that, gentlemen, I'm thrilled to have all of you with us here today. Excited for this conversation. Prasad, with that, I will turn it over to you to get things started.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. Let's advance the slide. Yeah, I am Prasad. Good morning, everybody. I'm Prasad Reddy, product leader for AI-driven MedTech and diagnostics at FPT Software. FPT is a full-service global engineering powerhouse headquartered in Vietnam. Not going to spend too much time on FPT, so let's just advance into the topic of the day. Let's just move forward. Let's advance. Yeah, my role is to work with MedTech device and provider partners to translate AI concepts into products and platforms that clinicians use and deliver measurable outcomes. Today, I'll walk you through three critical shifts happening right now in AI diagnostics: the transformation landscape, the integration stack from device to decision, and the success factors that separate programs that scale from that stall. So across the work we do with our clients, we consistently see three major shifts happening. First one, as you can see here, detection to decision. Historically, AI in diagnostics meant detection, flagging an abnormality on a scan or a lab result. The systems we are building now go much further. They provide decision support, ranked differential diagnostics, suggested follow-up tests, and recommended clinical pathways with confidence intervals and supporting evidence. In radiology, for example, we are moving from, hey, there is a nodule here to here are the top three likely diagnoses and what you should do next, all inside your PACS or EHR workflow. That's the beauty of it. The clinicians do not have to go into the existing workflows, do not need to get out of the existing workflows. The market also reflects the shifts. There are roughly about 950 plus AI-enabled medical devices now cleared by the FDA, Every major diagnostic modality now has some shape or form of the AI augmented workflows in production. The question our clients ask us is no longer, should we adopt AI? It is, where first and how do we scale responsibly? The second one is it's moving away from a reactive to a very predictive. So let me explain what this is. Most health systems still operate reactively. We diagnose patients when patients present with symptoms, when they show up in a clinic or a hospital. AI lets us risk stratify before symptoms appear by combining imaging labs, wearables, and history. What this does is this opens up about 40 to 60% earlier intervention in dose in especially high impact areas like cardiovascular and oncology, as an example. And then the third shift is it's moving from a siloed to integrated. Legacy diagnostic systems are fragmented. Imaging lives in one system, labs in another, vitals and wearables somewhere else. Our product work focuses on multimodal fusion, which is integrating wearables, diagnostics data, and EHR data into a single longitudinal patient view. The biggest barrier in interoperability, which we will tackle with standards-based integration, APIs, and cloud platforms that bring existing clinical systems. These shifts are not hype. They are happening right now and reshaping how diagnostics work. So let's move on to the next slide, please. Let me tell you how we think about the broader transformation landscape. You can imagine a simple map. One axis runs from reactive to predictive, the other runs from silo to integrate. Most organizations we partner with start in the bottom left, which is a reactive and siloed. They have strong point solutions, maybe a radiology AI overlay or a single sepsis model, but these tools do not talk to each other and often only activate once a patient is already quite sick. The vision we are designing towards with our partners is the one to the top right, integrated and predictive. This is where imaging labs, genomics, wearables, and all the operational data is fused into a continuous AI support view of the patient. A concrete example that I can talk about is in oncology programs, when you combine imaging signals with lab trends and wearable captured vitals, you can flag deterioration or treatment toxicity 24 to 48 hours earlier than current workflows would. The barrier that keeps organizations stuck in the bottom right left is the interoperability. Getting to image labs, devices, and the HR systems to share data in a structured, timely way, it's still hard. But the organizations that crack this using HL7, Fire, DICOM, or other cloud data lakes and modern APIs are the ones that turn AI into system level advantage rather than isolated point tools. Let's move to the next slide, please. Let's talk about this integration stack from device to decision. Right now, how do we build this in practice? From a product perspective, we think in terms of three-layer integration, AI-enabled devices and sensors. At the edge, we collaborate with device and MedTech partners to embed that intelligence. These devices generate signals. As a product leader, I focus on making sure they're not just technically impressive, but designed to plug into a broader platform with clear APIs, lifecycle management, and regulatory pathways baked from day one. And the second one of the most critical elements is this is the foundation that most organizations underestimate, which is the data infrastructure. We build platforms that use NLP or extract clinical insights, multimodal data fusion, as we talked about, imaging labs, wearables, genomic data. The other key important thing is ensuring FDA or other regulated pathway and compliance from day one and support continuous model monitoring post deployment. My role is to ensure this layer is productized, reusable components, SLAs, and a roadmap that can support many use cases. And the last one is the clinical decision augmentation. Finally, how do we bring intelligence to the point of care? This means evidence-based treatments, recommendations embedded in clinical workflows, medication error detection in real time that catches interactions or dosing issues, point of care guidance. Here, my focus is on co-design with clinicians, making sure what surfaces is actionable, explainable, and respectful of their time and expertise. When all three layers are connected, you get a learning system, devices feed data, infrastructure fuses and learns, and decision support closes the loop with clinicians. Again, as far as critical success factors, two critical success factors show up in every program we build. It's a clinical workflow integration and not a replacement. The second one is, can we actually explain it? That's what is explainable AI means. Clinicians need to know the reasoning. Clinicians do not need to see every parameter of a neural network or what is going on behind the models. But they do need to understand why a system is recommending something. And just to wrap up, AI is transforming med tech, diagnostics, and wearables in three fundamental ways, as we talked about. My role as an FPT product leader, my focus is to help our partners make that shift tangible. Pick the right pathways, design the right products, build the right stack, and integrate into the daily reality of clinicians and patients. If you're thinking about where to start, how to scale, what you already have, I would be happy to take up some questions or compare notes and use cases, product strategies, and integration approaches after this session. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Prasad. Okay, the baton is handed to me. My name is Dr. Gopal Chopra, neurosurgeon by background and consultant advisor to FPT as it pertains to the medical device and then digital healthcare environment. And it's a nice segue, is that, what sensors are devices. Let's talk about devices in a more, I think, integrated perspective as actuators. So right now I'm building what is a vascular pump. And vascular pumps right now are very large machinery with extraordinary pump power capability, but no transportability. They're very heavy, they're cumbersome, they're complex to use, they require high cost, high trained resources to manage. Yet we know have made a huge difference, which we witnessed during the pandemic, in avoiding traumatic ventilation and allowing patients to be oxygenated. So one of the biggest trends in medical devices has always been and continues to be miniaturization. We took a 26-pound machine and reduced it to 2 pounds. Next slide. And by doing that, we're able to ambulate the patient. The patient can now sit up, can walk, fewer resources. You take a lot of the risk of long cannulation, which can include thrombosis, hemolysis, hypothermia, away, and you enable the clinical staff to better care for the patient. And more importantly, you give the normal physiology of the patient to recover more rapidly. So as we develop this platform, it has a significant electromagnetic controller, which manages the pump and the pump speed, the impeller. It's drawing information from the device itself, which is giving you an indication of the patient physiology and the circuit status, whether there's resistance, whether or not we have particular issues going on with the oxygenator, how the blood is behaving and responding to the pump at different speeds. The device in of itself is intelligent on the physiological status of the patient. So medical devices now are providing the clinician and the clinical team more information than they used to. And that information now intelligently incorporates into a physiological view of the patient. So it's a diagnostic and a therapeutic. The question now is, can you combine the two in being responsive? And we've done that at a very early phase. The patient vasculature, vascular tone, and volume change when the patient does something as simple as sit up, stand up, walk a few steps. And by understanding the change in that physiology, the pump is able to recognize how much power is being drawn, what the resistance is, what the status of the volume circuit, preload, afterload pressures are, and respond to that with an appropriate increase or decrease in speed to maintain the blood flow at the appropriate level for that activity. So in summary, it's, the medical device is getting smart. Next slide. And smart used to be that it displays something interesting. Smart now, and something Prasad touched on, is interpretation. Can it be predictive? Can it interpret? Can it respond? And that's a collaboration of information and clinician. It can't do the final action. We're not yet quite autonomous, but it can be responsive within a range or a safety range that you require the device to perform at, whether it's a pacemaker, whether it's a pump, and it's becoming even more sophisticated, whether it's an insulin pump or other therapeutic device that is implanted or on the surface of the patient. A monitor can manage that with clear intervention parameters. So devices are now being programmed completely differently to the way they used to be because the information that's coming from the device real time linked to the patient's condition becomes a tracker for how the device should behave. And that biointegration is really a diagnostic sensor with a smart device. Between that, there's been an era of software as a medical device, but really the AI era integrates with software in a medical device and how those analytics drive these devices to be smarter and improve, the patient health outcome because you're allowing for quicker and more stable recovery as opposed to titration and reactive and responsive recovery, where a patient may go into a status that is difficult to recover or require sophisticated medication or intervention to respond to. These devices can be that much more informative. And then making the usability issue of what does a clinician need to see becomes very interesting. You display the key parameters, but underneath that, you're displaying the reasons for the parameters being as they are. There may be a combination of pressures or flows that indicate a particular issue that is either device related because you've got resistance in the oxygenator, or it's patient related because you've got a particular physiology going on in the lungs, which may be worsening or actually improving. So as this happens, we really are excited about the opportunity of smart devices making care delivery more accurate, care recovery simpler and faster, and ultimately preventing the patient from having sequelae that require readmission or more severe intervention like a transplant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chopra. Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Bladon. I am a GenAI HCLS specialist at AWS. I'm a solutions architect. So what that means is I help customers build these kinds of solutions that we're talking about here today on AWS and kind of help you with all the services and all the compliance and the security, all those kind of aspects that you need to build on AWS. And what I'm going to talk about today really are four patterns that I have seen our customers kind of building now in the age of Gen AI. And I'm hoping this is going to kind of tie everything that we've said here today together and kind of spur your creative juices about how to get kind of started on building some of these solutions that we're talking about. The first pattern that I see our customers using is AI-powered remote device support. So if you think about the situation here is you've got a device now, or you got many devices that that you support, and they're running inside hospital networks. That's sort of classic tough environment here. You can't connect in because there are strict inbound connection firewall rules that the hospital has set up, so you're not able to connect in. The devices really aren't able to connect out even, and so that makes device support very difficult. So support teams cannot remotely connect into devices. You've got sort of this, you've got a firewall that's basically preventing you uh, from getting in and out to the devices. And what that really translates to is cost, because now you end up having to send out device technicians, do so-called truck rolls out to the device out to the hospitals in order to support the devices. So what this and so what we see our customers building are these kind of cloud-based and on-prem based solutions that allow you to actually enable this kind of remote device support like we talked about. And the trick here is to build using AWS solutions here, build a reverse SSH tunnel. And what that allows you to do is you get a temporary secure uh, tunneling mechanism that allows you to connect from the cloud into the specific device. So it's like a point-to-point reverse tunnel that allows you to connect directly into that device on demand. It's temporary, so it goes away very quickly once you're done with that support session. But what that gives you the ability to do is do a VNC or a remote desktop into that device. And now I can gather all that telemetry, all the logs, all the kind of device specific data. And now I can provide from a cloud-based solution, I can provide live remote guidance to hospital staff, or I can do some training even on the device, but I can diagnose what's actually wrong with the device, whether it's just a configuration issue, whether it's a training issue again, or whether and I can limit the number of technicians that I send out to the hospital site. And we see our customers saving quite a bit of money just on this one pattern. So I've seen up to like 60% in the cost savings on just on this one pattern, like I said. And the services that are kind of involved here, I'm showing over here, that would be our IoT course service, which allows this kind of secure tunnel, but it also is all the device management and fleet management on the devices. The systems manager, which gives you the ability to control those devices. Amazon Bedrock, which is our GenAI platform, and Amazon Connect, which is our call center platform. Emery, you can go to the next slide. Pattern number 2 is running AI on the device at the edge. So we've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but I wanted to talk about some of the techniques that we see customers using in order to do this. Like Dr. Chopra said, and Prasad, we're seeing more and more people, and it's becoming like a requirement now to deploy AI out on the devices. So how do you actually do about that? How do you do that in an environment where you have to support the submissions and you've got a large staff actually running these ML pipelines and enabling that model to be trained and built. So what I'm showing here is sort of a pipeline of how that would look, where the medical devices now are managed on the device by a little piece of little service platform that is called Greengrass that we run on the device by Amazon. That allows you to do over-the-air updates on models or other software that's running on the device. It gives you A/B testing so you can deploy and on demand all the services out to that platform. And specifically, this pipeline allows you to train your model in the cloud, so on SageMaker, but then deploy that model out to the edge on IoT Greengrass. And the key little piece of technology service that we're applying here is called SageMaker Neo. And that is a model optimization service that allows you to, like I said, to train your model on SageMaker. So you got the big SageMaker environment for model training. But then in your ML pipeline, you can convert that model to the device-specific environment that will allow that model to run on the device. So uh, so there's a lot of conversion there that has to go on in order to make you take your kind of generic model and be able to run it with all the specifics on the hardware, especially like the GPU type and things like that that would be running on the device. And so this gives you the ability by being able to run that model in a GPU instance on the device itself, you get the sub-second latency. So now you have very low latency that's running on the device, so you don't have to endure the cloud latency up to the cloud. It works in the disconnected environment. So if you lose network connectivity or you lose connectivity up to the cloud, your device isn't dependent on that. And lastly, this gives you the whole, like I said, the whole lifecycle management, A/B testing, so that you can ensure that your models are performing and up to spec on the devices. All right, Marie, you can go to the next one. So pattern three, and I think Prasad already talked about this, but this is kind of how you would do that kind of multimodal data fusion environment. We see lots of customers doing this now. So you might be pulling your data from a lot of different kinds of devices using IoT Core. That's our IoT management system, and MQTT. The data is being communicated over. We run those into Kinesis streams and then into a time series database. Ours is called TimeStream. And that allows you now, with that time stream data that you've got now into the cloud, you can invoke all of your now large-scale AI models with Bedrock and SageMaker in order to do that sort of data fusion and then do predictive analytics on top of all that data. Yeah, and now pattern number 4 is specifically on medical imaging. I have a lot of medical imaging customers, and I see them now using the cloud and our AI training and inferencing services like SageMaker and Bedrock. But the first part of that is taking off of your medical devices and ingesting into a health imaging DICOM store that ours is called Health Imaging, and that gives you sub-second retrieval and lots of cost reduction in the storage of that data. But it also then gives you cloud native APIs that allows you to now with sort of standard APIs, I can now pull that data into, say, SageMaker in order to build custom models. I can do generative AI on top of that, and so we see customers using and first of all training classification models, so doing classification on the imagery in order to say detect different disease classifications in the imagery, and then taking those classifications and being able to say do the auto generation of the impressions for the radiologists, and you can do all this with the models providing you the confidence scores and differential diagnoses, and ultimately what this allows the radiology to do is go faster on the types of images that are kind of the routine. So the AIs are helping them just go faster. It's not replacing them. It's just making that workflow faster so that their backlog is now able to concentrate onto the complex cases, which are the ones that they really like to work on and where they're really providing the majority of their training and background. And you can go to the next one. And I'll kind of wrap up here. The AWS environment was built from day one on a security and compliance foundation, not as an afterthought. So it wasn't bolted on. we've got over 150 HIPAA eligible services. Uh, and you can apply for a BAA with literally a single click in the console. Super easy to do. Um, and what we mean by HIPAA eligible services here is that it gives you the ability to lay your compliance program down into the your existing, say, corporate HIPAA compliance into the AWS environment. So AWS just plays an important role in that, and it gives you all the tooling to support your existing compliance program. So you're not having to bend your compliance program around AWS. It kind of fits very easily into your compliance program. Encryption at rest and in transit, these are all default situations in AWS. You get network isolation if you want to control that for PHI workloads. You've got various services that have compliance conformance packs. It gives you sort of real or uh, like a single pane of glass for seeing how your compliance and your security programs are progressing. And if you've drifted from your existing compliance programs and you need to mitigate those drifts. For GXP, we have pre-built audit manager for 21 CFR Part 11. Again, conformance packs for monitoring all of your, say, for example, your GXP IQ automation. We've got cloud trails that can become immutable, so you can use that for compliance. S3 object locks for making sure that your records inside S3 are always immutable, or at least immutable for a certain amount of time. The SageMaker model registry you can use for version control and model lineage, as well as data control and lineage as well. SageMaker supports A/B testing with automated rollback on models. The model monitor allows you to detect drift in the model itself. So as your production model is actually running, you can periodically check it for model drift using newer data. SageMaker Clarify, we talked about this for explainability and interpretability. This is obviously very important now, especially in light of FDA submissions. And federated learning, you can learn across the entire set of you can train your AI models across a very broad range of AWS regions, so you're not kind of locked down just to one particular region. You can share data across that entire AWS global footprint. Last thing I'll say here really fast, and I don't have a slide for this, but something that we don't think about, but your data scientists also, AWS has a pretty broad range of AI tooling for data scientists themselves and for AI software developers. So if your data scientists and your software development people aren't using the full abilities of AI code generation and data generation, then definitely reach out to me because we have a lot of capabilities there. But this is how I'm seeing all of our customers go way faster and maintain their level of HIPAA security and compliance by using these tools now to manage the complexity, but go way faster. So basically streamlining your software development process so that you're innovating faster and you're maintaining your compliance as you go. Anyway, that's all I've got. I appreciate everybody's time, and I think we'll jump over to questions.
All right. Thank you all for a great discussion. We do have some questions coming in. Just a reminder to everybody, the Q&A box there at the bottom of your screen is where you can put those questions in now. And we've got a few minutes now to get them answered. So we'll start off here. First question, on edge deployment, if you are deploying models on BYOD smartphones, so potentially many different GPUs, can you discuss the challenges and how you deal with those complexities? I'll just pose these questions to the entire group. Feel free to jump in.
You guys want me to take that? I could jump in here with an initial answer.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I think that is a challenge, obviously, and managing models where you, again, like I was kind of talking about, you're sort of training models in a generic way, so you're not sort of targeting a specific device when you train them, but then deploying out to potentially different hardware platforms. That's kind of what I was talking about with our service. It's called SageMaker Neo, but I think there's a broader sort of AI DLC here that's going on. The software development process that manages all that, manages all the model lineage, and then ensuring that those devices are functioning um, uh, after doing the model conversion out to those models. Um, and that's kind of what I was talking about in that one slide, but I'll let the other guys talk here.
I don't have experience in kind of the edge management of the data, but I will say that most of what we're using our mobile technology for, that is bring your own, is monitoring access. So we're able to view but not intervene. And I think it gets down to how cybersecurity being now one of the biggest issues that the FDA asks us to review and manage, and we're going through this right now with our controller, is to separate out communications and be very clear on telemetry protocols. And it's often safer to have all of the actions built into safe keys and actionable items directly linked to your device through a tablet. You don't want to be doing that through a BYOD device. That's more telemetry monitoring and view, again, not intervention.
Prasad, anything you would add?
Nothing from my end. I think it's yeah.
Okay. Next question coming in is some of the use of generative AI likely falls within the medical device boundary. Could you discuss how you perform risk management for the use of Gen AI within this context?
Yeah, happy to take that, Ben. This is such a broader question in terms of how Gen AI and medical devices. But I think I touched upon a little bit before. It's not about showing a diagnosis or an answer. It's more about, can the system actually explainable? It's called explainable AI. I touched upon a little bit. There are several things that have to be done. One is explainable AI. Hey, how is this Gen AI, giving this output based on some data, easily able to track that back into this? And the other thing is, most of these medical or biomedical equipment or whatever these equipment that are using Gen AI solutions have to go through a compliance and regulatory that has to fulfill a number of things in terms of validation and verification of devices, data sets, and all of it. That is a good checkpoint to make these solutions effective.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that generative AI has to have a solidified outcome parameter that's measurable and understandable. You're going to have to derive from where the model was built, the inference that it's making, and we're still in a very, early stage, infant stage of assessing the risks of doing that. So the models are rather simplistic, and the data is more obvious than nuanced. The era of, we'll get the red herring, pick up by AI is not there yet. We're using those separately through, um, you know, abstract and paper searches as we do roadside consults, but we're not integrating that into technology just yet.
Next question here comes from Oscar. What is this group's experience with hospital IT and biomedical equipment teams reacting to solutions that allow for remote access of devices and patient data? Chris perhaps addressed this with his slide on HIPAA and security, but would appreciate any additional insight from this panel. Chris, maybe you want to jump in on that.
Yeah, I can start us off at least. Hospitals do not like remote access. They do not like it at all. They have very strict. Every time I've ever had to deal with this, they have very strict IT teams that are managing the network. They don't like inbound access and they don't like outbound access. They don't like any of it. They want and so this is, yeah, so your question is pretty spot on. What I've the balance to this, I would say, is that the hospital, the business of running the hospital wants to have that capability. So they want cloud access. They want network access for the devices. They want to be able to support the devices. So in order to facilitate the business, you need to have that kind of access, especially up to the cloud or on-prem or whatever. But like I said, the IT team, they don't want this. So you got this kind of conflict that's happening between them. And what I would say is that the way to kind of solve this is by sort of controlling, like I showed in that one pattern, the idea of basically very, very temporary controlled access of a device. So basically setting up that SSH tunnel that only allows a point-to-point communication between the cloud sort of UI environments or support environments down into the device, and have that support be very, very quick, or just in as long as it needs to act, have it be encrypted over the entire flow of the network, and then basically trying to prove to the hospital that you're minimizing the exposure of that reverse tunneling so that they can accomplish their business, and they're doing it in a very secure way. But I will say I don't want to minimize how hard that is. It is difficult, and it's just a matter of sort of convincing them by making sure you got all your ducks in a row, making sure you're sort of minimizing the effect of that. That's what I would say.
And my comment to that would be the domino has fallen. Telemetry and access is paramount. You've got organizations and vendors where we'll call it vendor safety, whether it's in an operating environment or a cardiology environment or even an intensive care environment. And we are getting EICUs, we're getting remote access. This is a today problem, like it's happening, but tucking in under an already secured contract vendor who does this, I think, is the easiest access point to the healthcare IT team. They're very aware that they're going to have to provide remote access. The question is how.
Next question comes in from Gwen. How are clinical trials for AI-assisted devices usually approved and funded?
I don't think anything has changed in terms of the funding piece of it. As far as the approvals are concerned, I think it comes with additional compliance and regulatory tags. And generally, all these clinical trials always go through an IRB. That hasn't changed. I think there's additional scrutiny in terms of approval. As far as funding is concerned, I don't think the clinical trials in terms of how funding, with the advent of AI, it has changed anything. Maybe Dr. Gopal can also give his insights.
Yeah, I think approval right now I think has been clarified from the perspective of, so long as the model generates a plausible, clinically derived outcome, the approval is for a particular model within a risk ratio that has to be displayed. So we have many devices now that can pick up quite significant life-threatening events, and it can create an alert. It can go the next step of an intervention. So diagnostic AI, I think, is well established. Generative AI and its use in terms of therapeutic predictability and advice and guidance on patient care delivery, we're not there yet. I haven't seen a model yet that proves safety there.
Next question here is from David. If AI-enabled devices can shift care from reactive to predictive or preventative, how do you all see the value being shared between patients, providers, payers, and device manufacturers?
Yeah, happy to take that, and I'll also look for Dr. Gopal and Chris to add to it. One of the things that's really shaping up is the payment models haven't shifted, but there are existing payment models that will be leveraged as we move into this AI and reactive. And I'll give you a couple of examples. From a beneficiary perspective, the payer is the one that's actually going to benefit the most. And that benefit is going to be trickled down to, providers, medical device manufacturers, and all. So, for example, a lot of what we're looking at is it's always been a fee for service model. Now, pay for performance is going to, come up into the mix a lot more than it has done in the past. Shared savings is built on a benchmark. So, for example, let's say we're able to prevent something and that saved $10,000, right? That $10,000 savings for the payer will be distributed to potentially the providers, hospital systems, and also the manufacturers. From a manufacturer perspective, one of the big shifts that we're seeing is in terms of how AI is enabling a different business model altogether. It's going from a completely CapEx to an OpEx. Let me give an example of what that is. So, for example, if it's a $300,000 or a $400,000 urine analysis or a hematology equipment, in the past, the reference labs and hospitals would actually pay 300 or 400,000 upfront. One of the things which is always going to be a capex, what that is doing is instead of a capex model, they're moving to an opex model. Instead of saying, "Hey, pay me 300,000 or 400,000," they're actually charging by something like a fee for service model. So for every test and diagnosis, you pay us a certain amount. So this way, the hospitals do not have to invest so much, and it's going to shift in terms of their finances and operating model. That's also going to lower their costs of operations. The other thing that is happening also is bundled payments. In certain areas where CMS has done bundled payments, but it has not been widely accepted with the advent of AI and how things are moving. That's another area how payments are going to shift into, hey, if you're going to go to a knee surgery or surgery X, we're going to pay you a fixed amount. Let's say it's $20,000, doesn't matter. But then if the hospitals and providers are able to do it much more efficiently and get it down to 10,000, the hospitals are going to benefit out of it, which is the $10,000 savings. So a number of things that are coming out in terms of payment models.
Yeah, I think the benefit from, let's call it a smart medical device to the customer base overall, as you're trying to think through value proposition through the thread. Um, at the end of the day, we're looking at AI to dramatically reduce the cost of continued or prolonged or unnecessary care. And I think the cost story is going to be very meaningful in terms of early intervention, detection, prevention. That's really where AI has been quite a force and will continue to be. So we'll see a cost shift under the reimbursement umbrellas that we already have. So we're using codes that already exist for quite invasive or extensive procedures, and we're presenting lower cost solutions, and that provides an opportunity to the maker of the solution through margin, but also downstream, as Prasad says, to the payer, but now provider payer, to the hospital system, saying that we are reducing significant costs by producing better patient outcome recovery. So I think that cost umbrella and reimbursement is now becoming a bigger opportunity. Devices can't leave money on the table. They need to bring out the smarts of what their device is detecting. So I'd encourage you to kind of really look hard at the nuanced insight that the device is giving that can have a significant impact. And then we're doing exactly that with the ECMO pump. I'm doing it with another company as we speak now as well.
I'll throw one thing in here really fast, and that is that I was wanted to piggyback off of what Prasad said, that the payers really have the main thing to gain from that kind of sharing. But I think in order to really drive it and make it actually happen, this has to come from the patient. So it's like it's got to sort of come from two sides, the way I see it. The the uh, the member patient agency, I think, has to start demanding the sharing of data in order for it to actually happen. Otherwise, just through regulatory means, we've kind of seen this. Um, I'm not sure how effective that is right now. So, what I see AI doing is actually putting more agency in the side of the patient, the member patient. So, is sort of putting more capabilities in the hands of of the members and the patients, and that's I think going to drive more demand, hopefully, uh, that will cause more of that sharing to go on.
Last question here for the group as we wrap up today's webinar. How are you monitoring and adjusting for the AI data and MedTech regulations in a rapidly changing environment? Any insight here for our attendees?
It's a tough question. Again, there is no one way that we have figured out as things are changing. The way I look at it is I treat regulatory monitoring as a build system with owners and cadence, not like an ad hoc tracking, because the change velocity across these domains now exceeds like what informal scanning can hold. So it's about really building a system. The few things that we keep track of is FDA guidance and the draft guidance, the recognized standards list like EU MDR, IVDR, the AI Act facing that's in through like 2026, 27. These are some things that you'll have to be thinking about. Again, there is no one good answer at this point. The way we look at it is how do we design for volatility? Build the strictest regimen, keep intended use tightly scoped, anchor to standards, keep the architecture modular. So let's say you build or you design something and something changes, you've got to be in a position to be able to rapidly shift. Unfortunately, I don't have a straight answer that says here are the three things that you need to do. Yeah, Dr. Gopal or Chris.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, the companies that we're building or investing in, it is a bit of a team approach. Regulatory is where we have our eyes on all the time. You can't let that go. And I think data governance, security, and validation, those are key factors that if there is a shift, you need to know about it, you need to react to it. So before it even becomes legislation or anything like that, I think regulatory is the key driver to a lot of what we're doing. But the untapped opportunity is design. Can you design something because regulatory and others are still learning that solves a problem, that provides an insight, and they're still, I think you'll find that they're very willing listeners, but under their auspices and their advocacy, they're very focused on validation and security, and that those two themes in of itself, the nuances continue to change, and the hurdle seems to be higher at some times, and then you realize no, there are chip and firmware advancements that have been made to control that, and you can get back to actually focusing on the actual clinical effect of the device or what it's monitoring or what it's affecting. But yeah, very very clearly a hot issue, and within 6 months of a design, something might change, and you need to be ready to respond because nothing gets grandfathered in.
Yeah, one thing I would add is you can't fully de-risk a moving target. That's the
Yeah,
key
that's
takeaway here.
yeah, it is a
Requirements will
moving
shift
target.
after design and sometimes even after you ship. The goal is to, sort of build a system responsive enough that a change is managed as an input rather than a crisis.
That's great insight. Chris, anything you'd finally add there?
Yeah, I'll just add one thing, and that is that what I see a lot of customers doing is using AI to sort of manage this process. So using all the tools that includes your coding platforms, your analytic platforms, and just your productivity tools that you're using during the day. We've got our productivity tool that's called Amazon Quick, but there's lots of them out there. But the idea of using those tools to keep you on the compliance regulated path so that because there's so many balls you have to keep in the air while you're doing this that it becomes a complexity problem that's very hard to handle. So I see customers using AI tooling now to manage that process, manage the software process, manage the innovation process, and manage the just regulatory compliance and audit process in order to keep all those balls in the air, or maybe another analogy, keep the plate spinning. Maybe that's a better analogy. Anyway.
I think it's a good place to leave it, gentlemen. Dr. Chopra, Chris, Prasad, really appreciate your time and this great discussion here today. A reminder for everybody who's tuned in still, this is all been recorded, so we will send you a link to this in just the next couple of days, so you can rewatch or send to a colleague there as well. There's also that QR code there to connect with FPT, and we'll send out a little bit more contact information if you'd like to contact the FPT software team. So anyway, with that, again, gentlemen, really appreciate your time and your insight here today. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your morning.
Thanks, everybody.
You.
Thanks, everyone.